Hi, my name is Patricio My topic tonight is NCAA restrictions. NCAA stands for National Collegiate Athletic Association, the association which regulates student athletes. My major claim is that NCAA restrictions have a negative effect in student athletes. My supporting claims is that NCAA restrictions harm the college life of student athletes, that NCAA restrictions allow universities to take advantage of student athletes, and NCAA restrictions make student athletes get low compensation. To support my first secondary claim, the NCAA restrictions harm the college life of student athletes. My first point is that student athletes are commonly restricted from certain classes and majors. Mark then said in an article called "The Colleges Drop the Ball with Student Athletes" that a former Northwestern University quarterback wanted to choose a major that would prepare him for medical school, but because he had football commitments, he ended up choosing psychology, because since the time he could spend on the playing field would have been compromised by the courses required for typical pre-med school. My second point supporting the NCAA restrictions on the college life of student athletes is that the extraordinary physical and mental demand from athletic and academic obligations negatively affect student athletes' performances. An article by Corley and Cunningham stated that student athletes participating in intercollegiate sports has great time demands and is expected to have a high level of commitment. The disconnection to campus, that is grades, can result in a negative experience for the student. Loneliness affects academic and athletic performance, and poor athletic performance affects academic performance, and so on. In addition, a major factor in students leaving an institution is the feeling of personal isolation, which relates to the loneliness feeling. My second supporting claim is that NCAA restrictions allow universities to take advantage of student athletes. My first point is that athletes commonly leave their schools after the coaches cancel their grants in aid or scholarships. According to author of Meet of Students, the college athlete as employee, Robert A. McCormick, says that under NCAA rules, on the basis of athletics ability, performance, or contribution to the team's success, because of an injury or illness that prevents the athlete from participating in athletics or for any other athletics reason, nothing bars a coach from refusing to renew the athletic grant in aid for the ensuing quarter, semester, or year. By this, I meant that if an athlete does not play well enough, or if a better player arrives, or even if the athlete gets injured, the coach may refuse to renew the athlete's grant in aid. My second point is that scholarships and gear is a tool to manipulate student athletes. I had the chance to witness how a very close friend had the opportunity to go to one of the best Division I for schools in soccer, but because he had struggled affording off-campus expenses, it made him choose a community college, which provided him a car, a room, and extra money to spend. This is just an example of how universities can use or manipulate players by offering them necessary things to live. My third point is that student athletes are restricted in terms of medical care. By restricted, I meant that how they do not get the best medical care. They depend on the university's medical staff. In terms of covering costs for medical care, student athletes do have insurance provided by the school. But even though they have insurance, for example, I lived a situation similar to this, that I had insurance, but the medical staff wasn't capable enough for determining if I needed surgery or not. They actually tested me for a problem in the knee called patellar tendonitis, when in reality I had hard tissue accumulated in my knee called plica that required surgery. As a result, I had to be off the field for 5 months. My third and last supporting claim is that NCAA restrictions make student athletes get low compensation. My first point is that universities and coaches benefit from athletes' performances. By this, that athletes are the ones who at the end win or lose games, not necessarily the coaches. However, coaches are getting the biggest payout. I have a stat that says that universities' football coaches average a salary of $1 million, when a university president median salary is around $320,000. and a university professor averages a salary of $80,000. Andrew Zimbalist, professor of economics at Smith College, said if a coach is getting 5 times as much as a university president and 20 or 15 times as much as an average full-time professor, that's making a statement to the student body about what's really important. My second point is that universities sell a multi-million-dollar lifestyle when they know there is a slight chance of making it true. The author Linda Chavez of the article called How Colleges Exploit Athletes says, "I have no doubt these players love playing, and being a college athlete does enhance one's college experience. But let's be honest, the best players are hoping to parlay their college records into offers from professional sports teams, with the payoff coming in their own multi-million-dollar contracts. Most college athletes, however, won't see those rewards." So with this said, NCAA restrictions do have a major negative effect in student athletes. Not only do they harm the athletes physically and mentally, but affecting them financially, medically, and giving them low compensation in relation to the commitment to the sport. In a way, saying that NCAA puts the organization first, that what really matters, the student athletes. Thank you.
Okay, well, the propositions clearly identified at the beginning of the speech. I think you explained a little bit about what the controversy is. I thought there was an excellent preview of what the supporting structure was going to be. But when we get to the structure of the speech, it got a little bit confusing. I heard point 1, point 2, point 2, point 3, point 3, point 2. It was like you have it over-structured. I think that you have multiple claims under the individual claims, and it just gets confusing as a consequence. So you need to simplify the structure for us from an oral presentation so it doesn't stay that confusing. I think you get a little bit of credibility because you speak with some personal experience, and you've got a couple of examples that you use. Unfortunately, a couple of those examples I think are just pretty limited. They're, the Northwestern quarterback has to choose a major based on their hours and that sort of thing. That's particularly an unusual situation or circumstance. Is that typical? Is that really what happens? All we've got is the one example there. You make the argument about the medical staffs not being competent because a medical group looked at your situation and had a different diagnosis originally than the one that ultimately turned out to be accurate. Well, the first question is, ultimately they did figure out what it was, and would you have had to have that time off anyway, regardless of what the original diagnosis was? I'm not sure that that changes anything in that situation. And again, it's a personal experience. I don't know that that is unique to, representative of what happens, especially at a variety of levels of competition. The thing that I think is a little problematic is on several of these points, there's not really a demonstration it's the NCAA that is producing these outcomes, but rather it is either the school or the university system itself, not the NCAA and its rules. The scheduling of classes is done by the university. The decision about what to pay the coaches, for instance, is done by the university. The lack of regulation on what the coaches can do with their scholarship, that might be something that is attributable to the NCAA, and a rule could address that sort of situation. But I think you're kind of attributing causality here when there are multiple causes that you're dealing with here. And speaking of multiple causes, one of the causes is mentioned at the end. You say that the universities are exploiting the athletes. How do we know it's not the other way around? I think the frequency with which basketball players, for instance, do the one and done outtake is a good illustration about how student athletes are exploiting their relationship with the university to leverage themselves into professional positions rather than the other way around. So I think you need to demonstrate that that's really a consistent policy. Do the vast majority of students understand, or do they not understand what their odds are, what their chances are of becoming a professional? If you could demonstrate that the NCAA in some way blinds them to this, as opposed to them being blinded by their own ambition, then I would say that you've got a little bit of causality going on here. But that's one of those things that I think there are plenty of counter causality arguments to be made on the point. All right, thank you.